Kolhapuri Chappals set to go global. Prada to team up with Indian artisans. Made in India sandals worth rupees 85,000. Controversy turns into collaboration. Can Kolhapuris hit $1 billion exports?
Well, at first glance, the world of high luxury, fashion and the dusty, handcrafted lanes of Kolhapur seem to exist in opposite universes. One is defined by runway lights, avant-garde silhouettes and global branding. The other by families who stitch leather by hand, craft sandals on mud floors and carry forward traditions that are older than most modern nations. But these two worlds are now set to collide. Hello and welcome. You're watching NewsX Explained with me, Vineet Malhotra. Today we are talking about Prada partnering with Litcom and Litker to co-create the Kolhapuri-inspired sandals. Litcom is Sant Rohidas Leather Industries and Charmakar Development Corporation, and Litker is Dr. Babu Jagjeevan Ram Leather Industries Development Corporation. These are two government bodies that safeguard, promote and develop the Indian leather industry and the heritage of Kolhapuri Chappals. These two bodies have signed MOUs at the Consulate General of India, the Consulate General of Italy in Mumbai at the Italy-India Business Forum. Prada in a release said that the agreement sets out the framework, implementation and guidance of the Prada Made in India X-inspired by Kolhapuri Chappals project, which will celebrate Indian craftsmanship through a limited edition collection of sandals. As per the deal, the Italian banner will be making these sandals in Maharashtra and Karnataka, bridging the gap between Indian craftsmanship and Italian technology. Prada's Kolhapuri-inspired collection will be available for sale in February 2026 across 40 stores worldwide and online. The brand would be making around 2,000 pairs of sandals that reportedly would be sold for $939, which amounts to around 84,000 rupees. Taking to his official social media platforms, the Union Minister for Commerce and Industry heaped big praise on the truly global collab. Let's listen in.
I am happy that Prada has picked that up. I am happy that we will now be able to offer the Kolhapuri brand, the Kolhapuri designs to the rest of the world. And I do hope, I had always envisaged Kolhapuri Chappals to be able to do an export of $1 billion from India. And that's the potential that I would like both sides to collaborate and work towards.
Well, this is probably one of the best examples of converting a setback into an opportunity. The real Prada Kolhapuri lore begins 6 months back in June 2025. The controversy erupted when Prada Men's 2026 fashion show Milan runway featured models wearing a sandal unmistakably resembling the traditional Kolhapuri chappal with thick leather soles, central thong straps and the familiar handcrafted silhouette. The brand had lifted a century-old Indian craft without attribution. Prada had described the footwear as leather sandals with no reference to an Indian connection. Social media amplified the backlash, with artisans, collectives and cultural commentators arguing that a global luxury house had appropriated a regional craft while the original makers remained unacknowledged and unpaid. The criticism grew sharp enough that it threatened to overshadow the collection itself. In fact, a PIL was filed in the Bombay High Court seeking a direction to restrain fashion brand Prada from commercializing and using Kolhapuri chappals that are originally a GI tagged product from Western Maharashtra. Post this outrage, two things happened. First, Prada acknowledged that the footwear in the Milan show was inspired by the Indian handcrafted footwear Kolhapuri. Second, in July, faced with the mounting scrutiny, Prada moved to contain the fallout. 4 members of its design and research team traveled to Kolhapur to study the craft firsthand, meeting artisans and observing the traditional vegetable tanning process and understanding the cultural and historical significance of the chappal. However, to understand Prada's interest, one must first understand the Kolhapuri chappal itself. It is not just a piece of footwear, but as a cultural artifact, a regional identity and a living, breathing craft tradition. Long before it caught the eye of international designers, the Kolhapuri chappal was part of India's everyday life. Its history goes back to at least the 13th century, with roots in the Satavahana period and connections to the leather working communities of Maharashtra and Karnataka. What we know today as the Kolhapuri emerged through centuries of refinement of villages such as Athani, Kapshi and Kapsi, where families crafted footwear entirely by hand. These sandals were originally known by different names including Petan, Kachkari, Bhutka and Chippa, and each was linked to a particular village that specialized in its own style. It is a tale that the beginning of Kolhapuri was a search for livelihood with little empathy. A young man gazed at a bruised and bleeding feet walking past him and thought to himself to make something to ease their pain and also earn a penny for a change. After researching for days, he comes up with an idea of making a chappal with the 70 vinchu seeds or devil's claw seeds, which he would put inside a single chappal and oils it with groundnut oil, giving them a crackling sound with every step. This, he believed, would scare the insects around. To make a Kolhapuri chappal, craftsmen use many tools like hammers of different sizes, punches, rappi or a knife, sewing machine. These chappals are made from processed leather. Mainly buffalo, goat or bull hides are used in the manufacturing of these. This leather is processed and grazed. The process of making the chappal starts with removing the hair from the hide. Salt and lime powder is mixed with water in a big tank and the hides are soaked in it for 4 days. As the skin becomes softer, it is stitched with the sisal leaves into a bag form. And after a design and the size are finalized, the craftsman uses a stencil to mark the shape and size. Layer after layer are stacked together to prepare a sole. To bind those leather or cotton threads are used to stitch them together. The straps are attached to the base part of the chappal, and for ornamentation purpose, different type of threads and zari are used. The reason Kolhapuris gained such iconic status lies in their unique combination of durability, aesthetic simplicity and handcrafted detail. A single pair takes between 6 and 8 hours to make, sometimes longer depending on the intricacies of stitching. Each stage, including cutting, punching, tanning, braiding, stitching, polishing, is done manually. When urban India discovered artisanal fashion in the late 1990s and early 2000s, designers began incorporating Kolhapuris into fusion wear. Fashion magazine featured them with jeans, kurtas and dresses. Influencers styled them as boho chic. However, behind craftsman's hip comes the crucial aspect of authenticity, something protected legally by the GI tag. In 2019, the Kolhapuri chappal received a geographical indication tag, and under this only footwear made in 8 districts, which are Kolhapur, Sangli, Satara, Solapur in Maharashtra and Belgaum, Dharwad, Bijapur, Bagalkot in Karnataka can legally be called Kolhapuri. The GI certification protects artisans from imitation products that flood local markets, often mass-produced using synthetic materials and sold cheaply. It also helps preserve the cultural legacy attached to the craft. Prada's collaboration with Kolhapuri artisans has turned a controversy into a global opportunity for a traditional Indian craft. Yet, the 84,000 rupee price tag raises a clear question of relevance back home. In India, only a very small group like luxury shoppers, fashion collectors and high-income buyers are likely to purchase such an expensive pair. For most Indians, Kolhapuris remain a symbol of accessible, everyday craftsmanship, not a luxury collectible. The real test now is whether this partnership elevates the artisans who built the legacy or simply turns a grassroots craft into an elite commodity.
Kolhapuri Chappals set to go global. Prada to team up with Indian artisans. Made in India sandals worth rupees 85,000. Controversy turns into collaboration. Can Kolhapuris hit $1 billion exports?